Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the dugout. We have an off-season episode for you guys today. We're going to cover free agency, just everything happening over the off-season right now. I'm joined alongside Justin. Um, yeah, we're back. There's a lot of news for us to cover, obviously. Obviously, there's two big ones. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto, um, both shuffling up the league, especially Shohei Ohtani. I mean, record-breaking North American sports deal. Um, just absolutely crazy. I mean, we talked about how much he would potentially get over the offseason, and I don't think either of us mentioned a $700 million
Yeah, no,
contract.
no,
I think we were
nowhere
looking more
close.
in the. I think everyone was looking more in the 5 to 600 million range. And then obviously with the injury too as well. Probably expected to get a little less, but no, the Dodgers went out, offered him 700 million big ones, and just on top. I mean, on top of his endorsements in the U.S., on top of his endorsements probably in Japan, he's probably making well over $1 billion over the course of his contract. Obviously, the contract nuances. He's only getting paid $2 million a year, which that in itself is probably crazier than making $700 million.
100%. Yeah, when I mean, it allows them to do things like get a glass now from the
Yeah,
Rays, and allows them to
exactly.
keep on building, and which is crazy to think that they're going to be able to keep on adding players when you have Betts, Freeman, Otani, that are probably going to bat back to back to back. So yeah, I mean, it's a pro move, but like you said, endorsement wise, he's still going to make bank, over the next decade. And then he's got one heck of a retirement plan with deferred
Yeah,
money.
I
That's
mean
that's for sure.
680 after retirement, and that just I mean I don't know how the Dodgers are gonna afford that down the road. Obviously, I'm not gonna worry about it until we get there. But having to pay $68 million a year after he's done playing for them um, is almost unfathomable. I guess the owners could just sell the team and leave the debt with someone else. But yeah, that was big for the sports world. Obviously, he's not pitching this year. Um, so the 700 million, some people questioned it. You're paying for a two-way talent that isn't a two-way talent at the moment. We don't know what he's going to be like when he returns, obviously from Tommy John. So tough to navigate, tough to forecast. Regardless, he's the highest paid North American athlete ever. I don't think it's really even close. You can get two Patrick Mahomes out of him. Yet he's the 17th highest paid player on the Dodgers this year, which is crazy to think about. You have a few rookies making more than him. I mean, like guys like Amon Rosario are making more than him. But then obviously, like between Betts, Freeman, and him, just in terms of total money, I mean, they've invested well over 1.23 billion dollars into those three players, which is crazy to think about. Obviously we saw the Mets get really close to I think they might have hit the $1 billion point with how much they were paying. Scherzer, to Lindor, etc. Obviously that didn't work out for them. The Dodgers haven't had much playoff success in recent years. Obviously they've had the COVID. They have the COVID World Series, but outside of that,
Yeah.
they haven't won a World Series in a long time. And hopefully Shohei can turn it around, but the big money moves haven't paid off in recent years. So it'll be interesting to see how far they get. Obviously, they got bounced really early the past 2 years, so hopefully he can get them over the hump. But that top three, I mean, Betts, Otani, Freeman in the batting order is almost impossible to navigate.
Yeah, no, I mean it's you got obviously the AL MVP and Otani, and then you're gonna have Betts and Freeman who are in the MVP conversation for NL. So they're still all kind of in that peak area of their careers too. And to your point, I think for the Dodgers, I mean they've been making it rain for a few off seasons now, and the success hasn't really come of it yet. I
Yeah.
mean, I think everybody was pretty shocked last year when it came to their early exit against the Diamondbacks. Obviously, the Diamondbacks ended up having their kind of storybook
Hmm.
trajectory into the World Series. But still, I mean, when you're looking at kind of what the Dodgers had last year, you expected them to kind of move forward, be in World Series contention. I think that everybody kind of felt like that was a given. So now with Ohtani and Glasnow and anybody else that they may add moving forward, I think ultimately with all the money they're spending, you're expecting them to get there. Crazy about Ohtani too. I mean, with the 2 milli, I think it'll allow them to add more people like we spoke about. He's making less than Ken Griffey Jr. is from the Reds this year, which
Yeah.
I thought was
Yeah.
wild.
Yep.
Um, but nonetheless, yeah, I think ultimately right now the Dodgers are World Series favorites. And if this doesn't work out, I think you start getting into a few things with, is Dave Roberts the right person to lead the club and
Oh
who's
yeah,
going to stay, who's
that's
not.
already
Yeah,
swirling.
he's been under the hot seat for years now, but now it's really like, man, if you can't do it with this club or at least get there, it's going to be tough to keep his job after this year, I feel like.
Yeah, and then I mean, even with the addition of Glasnow, I mean, you John Lester's pitched more innings since 2019 than Tyler Glasnow has.
Yeah.
That to me is a tough contract. Obviously, it's a move they needed to make. They do need starting pitching. Kershaw's getting up there in age. You know, you have young Bobby Miller who looked awesome, but outside of that, really nothing crazy. Gonsolin had a really down year. He had one really good year. I think it was his contract year, which is to be expected. And then outside of that, was kind of had a really bad year this year. I mean, obviously, we know Tyler Glasnow is an incredible talent and an incredible pitcher when he's healthy, but haven't seen that in the past 4 or 5 years from him. So hopefully
Yeah.
we can see that with the Dodgers. They're still in the Yamamoto discussions as well. A lot of teams are. I don't. I can't really forecast where Yamamoto is going to end up. It's been very. I mean, I shouldn't say secretive because obviously Shohei's was very secretive. But Yamamoto's has been very quiet. There's no real, there's the final, six or so teams that are still in on him, but there's no real front runner to me right now. Um, the Red Sox finally, came out and said they threw 300 million at him. So hopefully, as a Red Sox fan, I would love to have him. We need a starting arm like that desperately. But then you have the Yankees, the Dodgers, obviously with the Shohei contract can afford another Japanese star like that. Um, with the Yankees, though, it's tough because you got to forecast, how you're going to pay Juan Soto as well. I mean, that's obviously the
Yeah.
plan is to extend Juan Soto. Let us take a quick moment here to tell you about our tremendous sponsor, HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. The holiday season is in full swing, which means the new year, spring training, and New Year's resolutions are right around the corner. Whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, find a new starting pitcher, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. Say hey to our most delicious year, yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you'll like, delivered right to your door. They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and HelloFresh agrees. In fact, they're giving all subscribers breakfast for life. That means you'll enjoy totally free breakfast items with every single HelloFresh delivery. Now that's worth a 10-year contract, no deferrals necessary. I recently tried the cheesy egg and guacamole breakfast sandwich. Not only was it delicious, but it took less than 15 minutes to prepare. It was a perfect breakfast before a full day following the latest baseball free agency rumors. Go to HelloFresh.com/dugoutfree and use code DUGOUTFREE. That's Dugout Free for free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/dugout free with code Dugout Free. So yeah, moving into the Juan Soto trade, I thought the Padres could have asked for more.
Yeah.
Um, I just thought based on their return, me personally, regardless of, his contract, I'm not answering the phone if one of the top three prospects isn't named, and they weren't. The Yankees didn't have to touch Dominguez. They didn't have to touch Spencer Jones. They didn't even have to touch Austin Wells. They got Higashioka in return. It just kind of felt like he was just thrown in there, maybe for salary relief. But yeah, I mean, a player the caliber of Juan Soto going to a division like that and a stadium like that, I thought the return was underwhelming for the Padres.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think if I was San Diego, I would have said like, hey, until you're willing to throw Dominguez in there, potential generational talent, switch hitter, outfielder, somebody that's pretty much going to be primed for the big leagues pretty soon, as soon as he recovers from his injury. I probably wouldn't have had many discussions. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, I know they wanted to get rid of Trent Grisham's contract, and that was kind
Yeah,
of a part of the deal too.
yeah,
So I know they found some value there. They took out, $50 million loan last year, so it sounds like they're trying to part ways with some contract liability, just to lessen that burden on them. But yeah, so do the Yanks should be super interesting. I mean, the guy's only 25 years old. It feels like we've been watching him play
yeah.
for
That's the
forever,
craziest part, right?
which we have. I mean,
Yeah,
he's been in the league forever, but I mean, yeah, with that short porch and right field, hit the most home runs he's had in his career this past year. Pairing him with Judge, getting them both some protection for each other. Stanton, if he's able to remain healthy, I mean that lineup in terms of the amount of home runs that they're going to be able to produce is going to be pretty insane. I mean, I think ultimately it'll be interesting to see what his contract ends up being. I know New York's super dedicated to making sure he stays a Yankee, but
yeah.
um, yeah, I was underwhelmed with the return as well. I would have thought, for me personally, unless I'm getting Dominguez, I'm not making that deal.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I understand that it's he's on the last year of a contract, but I mean, just look at how much the Padres gave up for 2 years of him.
exactly,
You're only talking about an extra year, and I know obviously that's an extra year. I get it, but they gave up I think two top five prospects plus other prospects as well. I mean, the Nationals got an absolute haul back for him, and those prospects are looking really good for them as well. So you would have liked to seen at least one. Michael King is a good arm. It's good for the Padres to get an arm like that back. Hasn't stayed healthy very much. Randy Velasquez is a highly rated prospect, 13th in their farm. So I mean that's not terrible. Johnny Brito's nothing special. He's been in the bigs for a while now and really hasn't moved the needle in any direction. And if he has, it's been in the wrong direction.
yeah,
Um, Thorpe again, the 99th ranked overall prospect, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the Padres should have gotten a positional player back with some value. I was a believer. I thought that Verdugo would have just been a flip piece for them. I thought he would have
yeah,
been involved in that somehow. Because now you look at the Yankees outfield, you have Oswaldo Cabrera, who the Yankees fans want to play a lot more, and he hasn't. And I know he can play other positions. Um, then you have Judge, Verdugo, Soto. Then you have Stanton. So it's a tough outfield to navigate now because you have guys that can DH like Stanton and Soto. Both Stanton and Soto's gloves. I know Juan Soto's won a Gold Glove, but let's be real, he's not a Gold Glover.
yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of Gold Gloves are handed out because of the bat as well. Verdugo's a great glove, but he just doesn't have the offensive prowess as Soto. Maybe even Stanton. He's a more consistent hitter than Stanton, but um, obviously with Cashman's comments, they're expecting Stanton to get hurt and be out for some time. So yeah, I don't know. Yankees definitely got better. Am I sold on the Yankees? No. Which sounds crazy to say, but what? Obviously, they get Juan Soto. Fine. Um, their pitching is still the same. They have Garrett Cole, Cy Young, fine. Outside of Garrett Cole, doesn't really impress you. Obviously, if they get the Yamamoto, then
yeah. That's
they're up there with the Dodgers as World Series favorites. But to me, and obviously I'm a biased Red Sox fan, I've seen the Yankees do absolutely nothing the past, what is it now, 14 years, and
yeah,
they've had some good players. So does it get me excited about the Yankees? Yeah, I love Juan Soto. I think Juan Soto is going to go down as one of the greatest hitters of all time. Um, they got to make some more moves to compete in the rest of this league, to compete with the Dodgers and to compete with the Rangers. Because I mean, you look at the Rangers too, right? Like the Rangers won a World Series without Jacob deGrom, not a fully healthy Max Scherzer. They're obviously out for a bit of time. They're going to be healthy again. How are you supposed to compete with a rotation that has Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer as a three in the rotation?
yeah.
You can't. So, yeah, I think the Yankees got more work to do, but It's obviously broke the world of baseball. One of the biggest trades. And not a team, honestly, not a team that I expect. I didn't expect the Yankees to make that move. I don't
No.
think, I thought, maybe the Mets were in play there. Even the Red Sox were in play for a little bit, but I didn't think the Yankees, the Yankees have been very dormant the past however many years. And I didn't think it was a move they'd make.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think which is crazy to say because you go back to, obviously like the George Steinbrenner days where it
Yeah.
was like you hear big stars up for trade, you're like, well, okay, first off, he's probably going to go to the Yankees. So yeah, it felt more like those times for sure when I
Uh-huh.
heard that it actually happened because you'd heard those rumors, kind of seeing the fan edits and stuff. And I agree, I just didn't really see that as a feasible option for them, but. It's kind of cool in a way to see that because it kind of felt like, some nostalgia there. But I agree, man. I mean, I think ultimately Soto's obviously a generational talent, but you look at what their season was last year and it was pretty dreadful. They set a lot of bad records in the sense of like their
Hmm.
record and where they finished in the division for the
Yeah.
first time in decades. And Garrett Cole won the AL Cy Young.
Yeah.
And so you have that, and then you have, obviously Judge was a little bit hurt last year, but assuming Stanton's probably going to get hurt, Cashman went pretty savage on that. I'm curious to see how that affects any free agent signings, if at all. But you got Stanton, and then obviously with Judge, he's had his injury past as well. So in terms of that, whether or not Soto, I'm sure obviously he's going to make them better. But if it pushes them, I agree. I think they need one or two more people. I know they signed Carlos Rondon last year. He obviously flopped hard in his first year.
Yeah.
If he can get back to where he was in San Francisco, I think there's ultimately, get him, Yamamoto. Then we're starting to talk actually some feasibility in them being in contention, but agreed in the sense that I think that they need a few more pieces to really feel like they're up at the top. Um, but it should be interesting. I think outfield wise, yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think people kind of underrate Soto's lack of defensive ability sometimes, and I think ultimately with Stanton, he's pretty solidified in the DH spot.
Yeah.
So, who are you going to give ABs to in terms of obviously Soto and Stanton? Stanton's pretty inconsistent, but he can obviously hit for power still. So it's who's going to be the one that's taking less at bats. It's probably not going to be Soto, but then you got Stanton making 30 plus mil, batting 50% of the time because they need the slot for Soto or for Judge if he, is coming back from an injury. So it should be interesting to see kind of how they work that through. I'm in agreement with you though. I think they need to make a few more moves to get back into the place where I'm like, okay, they're in contention with the division, especially with the Orioles. I mean, they only spent $35 million for the whole team last year, and they won over 100 games, and
Hmm.
they got even more prospects coming up into the bigs. That's going to obviously be in contention. So I think ultimately, and obviously the Rays continue to be able to produce wins out of their ball club. So yeah, I mean, obviously it shocked the world. That was still kind of crazy to see a big star go to New York. It felt kind of nostalgic there, but ultimately, I think they got a few more things they need to do for me to feel like, okay, cool, the Yankees
Right.
are backing that upper echelon of teams for contention.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it with the Padres too. Juan Soto doesn't fix you.
Yeah,
Obviously the Padres had a lot of issues too, but the Yankees have had their internal issues as well. And that's the thing. The Yankees, they got Juan Soto, but they lost Herman, which, say what you want about him. He pitched pretty well when he pitched last year. Um, has he been great during his career? No, he hasn't at all. Obviously, he has his off the field issues, but that's a starting arm. Frankie Montas didn't even come nearly close to working out. Rodon obviously hasn't come nearly close to working out. So it's tough to navigate for New York. I think like we've both been saying, they got to make some moves, and I think I think paying Juan Soto um, is the first step, so they can get
yeah,
that money down and look to where they can improve. They have prospects to trade as well. I mean, that's the thing is, again, you're talking about the crowded outfield. Obviously, Dominguez is hurt. I think he'll probably end up missing most of this year, but that's another outfield spot. Spencer Jones probably going to be ready this year. Another outfield spot. He can play first as well too. But you have Anthony Rizzo. It's just it feels like the Yankees have riches in places they were already. I mean, I'm not going to call them rich in other places. Obviously like Verdugo, Judge, Stanton isn't necessarily rich, but it feels like they're adding to spots they don't necessarily need. Obviously, I'm not trying to, insinuate that trading for Juan Soto is a bad idea. It's, never an issue to have too many good players. But when you look at some of the holes in their team, Glaber had an incredible year. But, the question is, how serviceable is IKF at shortstop? He's got a great glove. He, performed a lot better this year. But is that a New York Yankees shortstop in the lineage of New York Yankees shortstops? No. Again, third base, same thing. I don't even know who they're going to throw out at third base this year. Maybe Everson Pereira. Or, I don't know. But that's the thing. Catcher as well. Austin Wells will probably end up getting a lot of that, but they don't seem too sold on him. He's 24. He's been their number 3 prospect for years now. He's 24. Kind of have to make a decision there. Yeah. But yeah, I think Juan Soto, if we want to talk about the contract, Juan Soto's going to get up there with Shohei. I mean, they're paying Shohei $700 million for the, obviously there's the prospect of Shohei pitching at some point for them. But if you're looking at it right now, it doesn't seem as if they held that against him, and they're still committed to paying him that, even just for the bat. So
yeah,
Juan Soto not pitching, we could very well see him in the $500-600 million range. And obviously the Yankees are a team that could afford that, and a team that wouldn't be scared to do so, I don't think. Yeah. So yeah, he's gonna break the bank too. But with the Judge contract, even with the Stanton, I don't know how much left is on the Stanton contract. I don't know how much they have to they owe still, but the Garrett Cole contract, they have a lot of money down. I don't know. Could they reasonably afford Juan Soto at $550 million for 10 years without a restructured deal like Ohtani?
Be a tough one. I think ultimately, like you said, they got a lot of money already. And I think Stanton's deal is coming close, but obviously you're going to have Judge, you have Cole, you have a guy like Rondon from last year. I know he, not as long, but there's some money there. I think if you're the Yankees, I think by making this trade, you say like, all right, we're going to do whatever we need to do to keep this guy. And I think you're right. I think the bank is going to be broken by him, just for the simple fact, like we talked about. The guy's 25, 4 Silver Sluggers, World Series title. The guy is, especially with what he can do in that stadium. So I think they'll do kind of a classic Yankees move where they'll pay him and then be like, all right, we'll figure out the rest. But in terms of the amount of money that they would have after they sign him to a deal like that, there would have to be a lot of shuffling, I think. You'd have to part ways with some people in some capacity, or you'd have a really, really heavy lineup in the sense that you have, all right, cool, Soto, Judge, let Stanton finish out. We got Cole. And then you're starting guys at shortstop that don't feel like Yankee shortstops. You're kind of nameless at third base. So you might be in a hole like that for a while. And I think they probably view Soto as that type of talent where they're willing to do that for a year or two, and where they feel like he can get them over the hump. Now, whether or not that's accurate or not, we'll see. I think ultimately, to your point too, with all their other prospects, especially like a guy like Dominguez, I know he's out with the UCL. But obviously, when he did have some ABs in the bigs, he looked like he's the real deal. Maybe they use that to go out and get some cheaper pitching, or fill the gaps in their roster. That would certainly feel like more old school Yankees. So I'm sure just from them making this move, it seems like they're like, hey, we'll pay him first and worry about that later. But there's definitely some room for opportunity when it comes to kind of their lineup right now, because you're 1 or 2 injuries away from being like, who do we have? Who do we have on this lineup that's going to be able to produce for us? But I think ultimately, yeah, they're gonna pay first, ask questions later, and figure it out. And we'll see how that strategy pays off for them.
Yeah, with the if you combine the Judge contract, let's say Soto gets 450 to 550, the Cole contract, you're probably paying close to $1 billion for those 3 players. Obviously, the Dodgers doing the same thing, but they have the Shohei restructure, and we've talked about the Dodgers' struggles to get over the hump. Like, do you pay Juan Soto and kind of just face the fact that you're stuck with these 3 cornerstones and you kind of have to cheap out along the way everywhere else? Or do you say, we can't, let's build a team with the 550 million we could save here.
Yeah.
Obviously, like it's tough to pass up on a generational player like Soto, but given the Yankees struggles in the past however many years, it's tough because I think teams are going to throw a lot of money at Juan Soto. Like a team like the Mets, they could come out of here and throw $600 million at him. Are the Yankees going to top it? And if so, how are you allocating? How are the Yankees allocating this money across? Fielding a team that can win the World Series with. If they were paying Juan Soto over $600 million, they would have $1 billion between Soto and Judge.
Yeah.
The Judge contract, in my opinion, was a bad contract, regardless of how you look at it. Great for Judge; he deserves the money. Still a bad contract, just like the Xander Bogaerts contract was bad. You're paying a guy who's 32 for 10 years for that much money with injury history. I don't love it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Aaron Judge, one of the best players when he's healthy. And, the past few seasons, he's been relatively healthy. Obviously, he missed a lot of time last year, but the season before, obviously, we saw what he did when he was fully healthy. But when the guy's 6'8",
Yeah.
the history of 6'8" athletes, they wear down faster than your 6'4s and 6'5s. There's a lot more force on the body, and Judge plays a very hard and competitive right field. Obviously, he's one of the best at it. He's a great fielder. Don't get me wrong, but you're gonna move him to DH at some point, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we saw with Stanton how moving to DH, hindered him. A lot more injuries once he moved to DH. Hopefully, that doesn't happen with Judge. But I don't know. I'm not sold on the Yankees. I'm not sold on the Yankees paying him. I just don't think they can. It's a luxury they can afford. Obviously, it's the Yankees and they have endless money, but with the balance tax and whatnot, they've already, their pick dropped 10 spots just with the new draft rules already this year. Are they going to continue to do that with a relatively weak farm as it is now? I don't know. I think the Yankees, I think you go all in this year to win a World Series because they haven't in so long. And I think now is a great window to do it. It's a great opportunity. Aaron Judge is going to be fully healthy. You have Juan Soto. Garrett Cole is coming off of Cy Young. Keep Stanton healthy as much as possible. They have a couple of young pieces that have, showed flashes. I think now is their window to win a World Series. Maybe, depending if they get Soto back. It's just they're halfway between. It's tough to say. If I kind of think about it, it's like the Chargers of the football
Yeah.
world. Like they have these names, but the names don't offer much return sometimes because they're hurt all the time. John Carlos Stanton's like Joey Bosa. He's a hell of a player, but he's never on the field. So it's tough to say. They're really close to having to just shut it down and rebuild. This season could have definitely gone the other way. They could have definitely just sold at the deadline and said, we're just shutting it down. They didn't. They got Juan Soto. They're still a contending team. But, they're selling their soul here. Like how, just the
Yeah.
long-term impact. I've obviously seen it as a Red Sox fan, like the long-term impact of selling out for something. Obviously we're recovering better now with the farm, but I'm not sold on the Yankees. I don't know. I just think they're not close enough to one side. They're not close enough to making big splashes and being able to afford everything. But they're not young enough to do that. They're
Yeah.
they're a pretty old roster as it sits now. And that's I guess that's kind of what concerns me because once these guys start to fizzle out, let's say Judge, Judge's prime is probably what 3-4 years more from here. Stanton's already out of his prime. Garrett Cole, it's tough to say. He's getting up there. Obviously, he had a Cy Young season, so I can't say he's out of his prime. But yeah, I don't know. They
It's
worry me.
yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not not overly sold either, man. I think ultimately, again, you'd assume that they probably are like, all right, we're gonna work to. I think Cashman even said it. They're gonna work to sign Soto to a long-term deal. But to your point, then you're just really strapped on what you can do. We talk about, earlier with Judge, like, assuming if he continues his injury history, or I mean, he's just getting older and he's a big dude. I mean, playing outfield, ultimately, you probably don't want, your captain doing that all that much, but we already spoke about before. Now we're having a really clogged DH spot. So, where do we start batting these people in that regard? And then at that point, you're sacrificing some defensive wins out there. And I'm with you. I mean, I think it's very much like a, hey, cool, with the Yankees, we're going to bring over this generational talent. Sweet. But I think to your point, it's like, all right, we signed this person to big money. Now we have some really big names. Like you said, we had those Chargers where it's like, hey, but they got this guy, they got this guy, they got this guy. But then there's really no wins that ever come of it. And obviously, in that regard, that's the opposite of what you're looking for, especially with a guy like Stanton. You're like, man, I mean, I fall victim to that all the time. I'm like, well, they have Giancarlo Stanton. And then in reality, you start looking at stats and you're like, if this guy's name wasn't Giancarlo Stanton, I wouldn't look at this as anything more than some
Right.
guy that maybe they should cut. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think they're in a tough spot. I think sometimes they probably fall victim to, and I'm sure the Red Sox have had this happen, or big money franchises in general, but to the fact of like what's best for the ball club of actually just kind of rebuilding. Can you get that buy-in from your fans? If you're a Yankees fan or a Yankees franchise, do you even feel like you could do something like that, even if it's ultimately the best? It doesn't necessarily seem like they feel that way, or maybe they don't even think in that perspective of like, yeah, man, we got some aging talent here. We should probably actually just work on building our farm system. Instead, they bring in a great young generational talent, but again, you're paying $500 million to this guy. And over the next couple of years, it's going to really limit what you can do. You're going to lose out on draft picks, like you alluded to, which is therefore going to make your farm system worse. Anytime you're going to shed aging talent over the next couple of years, it's not like you're going to get large hauls of top-rated prospects, at least not
Hmm.
typically. So I'm with you. I just don't think this move, especially from what we saw from them last year, is all of a sudden where it's like, okay, well, this move makes sense because now they're all of a sudden in top contention. It makes them a
Yeah.
hell of a lot better. But in
Yeah.
terms of whether or not it's good for the short term or long term, I don't really see it either way. Obviously, Soto long term talent wise, of course, but contract wise, it puts them in a tough spot. So I'll be curious to see what happens and if they make the right move and if it works out for them. It'll be
And
interesting.
especially if you go and sign, like, let's hypothetically say they sign Yamamoto. Let's say
Right.
it's 350 million for 10 years. You can't. There's no way you can pay Soto.
No.
I mean,
I
even
mean,
Cashman said himself. Cashman said, we can't guarantee that this is a move past 2024. This is a short term move, but he makes us better in 2024. Correct. Fully correct.
yeah.
But in terms of just what, honestly, like for their return, for what they gave up, this was a great trade for them for a year.
Yeah.
Awesome trade for them.
Yeah.
But in terms of building for the future, like obviously, 2024 hasn't happened yet. I'm looking past 2024
Yeah.
just for fun, but I don't think there's a reasonable way that they can pay him and build. I mean, there is a way. That way obviously comes with penalties, and I
Yeah.
think that way sets the Yankees farther back than it would than trying to push for a World Series here in 2024 and 2025. I think they can make a push for a World Series in 2024 and 2025 without signing him. I think 2025, their prospects will be ready. I think the Yankees have really struggled the past decade or so with developing talent.
Yeah.
Not so much developing. They've had some really good prospects that played very well in the minors, but it didn't translate. Miguel Andujar, Gary Sanchez. None of it really translated. They got Volpe too. I forgot about Volpe. He's the
Yeah.
shortstop. But again, Volpe had a good year. Was it on par with the hype around him and what you want? No. Am I going to give up on him yet? No, obviously not. So yeah, I don't know. It's they need to get the Yankees need to get younger. Is I think the bottom line. If you look at the Braves are building a dynasty. The Braves are the standard, obviously. So it's tough to compare anyone to the Braves.
Yeah.
But just the way they've paid their players, how young they are. Even the Dodgers, relatively young. You have James Outman, Bobby Miller. A lot of that rotation is very young. Their relievers are young. Just World Series winning teams. The Rangers, it's a good mix of youth and old. You have young Carter, Heim, all young stars, but then obviously you have your savvy vets like Seager, Simeon, Scherzer, DeGrom. I
Yeah.
think the Yankees are just too far on the scale of old. I don't think they have enough good young players to have a mix, to be like a sustainable team, playoffs year in and year out. Which I think if you look at the playoff teams that are year in and year out good, it's a good mix.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Orioles are going to struggle as well, because they refuse to spend money. I mean, they have
Yeah.
so much money to spend. Obviously, they're going to have to end up paying a lot of their prospects, but if the Orioles were serious about winning a World Series, they would go sign some starting pitching. They would be in on
Yeah,
Yamamoto.
they
They
need
would
it.
be in
Yeah.
on the big name starting pitchers this year, and they haven't been.
Yeah.
Obviously, they made a couple moves, at the deadline this past year, but it didn't ultimately end up working out. They have great relievers, but their starting pitching kind of sucks, to be
Yeah.
honest. And I think their uh, unwillingness to do so is hurting them, just like it is the Red Sox, just like it does the Rays. The Rays are not the way the Rays play baseball and run their program. Um, Obviously creates wins, but it's not, and it's sustainable, but it doesn't get you over the hump because you have to have these stars that show up in big moments, when you're not playing in front of 5,000 fans in the Trop to play. And
Yeah.
it's shown to not be sustainable. But then I think the flip side of it, you have a team like the Mets who are fully on the side of buying and paying, and it doesn't work. So yeah, if you look at the history of World Series winners, it's a good mix of really good young prospects, along with good signings. And I don't think the Yankees are good enough. They have great signings and great moves to build their team. They're not good enough on the young side. And then, if you look at the flip side, the Orioles, they're really good on the young side. They don't have enough splash moves to push them over the hump. So I think that's, the issues with those teams. And that's why I think the Dodgers are going to be successful this year. That's why I think, they have a lot of young players. Obviously, and they're building depth. They have Margot now in the outfield as well. Really good deep bullpen. The rotation, Dustin May might come back this year. I'm not too sure, but I think that's why they'll be successful as well. And then the Braves too as well. I don't know. But in terms of the Yankees, we've been talking about the Yankees for a while, but that's my spiel on the Yankees. I think they just got to get a little younger. They gotta have some prospects hit, and they got some good ones coming up. So hopefully they do for them. But
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think, like you said, it's a combination. I think we've seen the Rays kind of get to the door and be unable to open it because they don't have that big star, and we've seen teams like the Mets feel very limited because they don't have any youth, especially as years go on with some of those contracts. So yeah, I think for the Yankees, it's going to be heavily reliant on their young talent. Um, they had the opportunity last year to kind of, I think, help produce and help put them in a better spot, and I don't necessarily think they did. I mean, Volpe won a Gold Glove, so obviously that's a great way to start your career. But ultimately, I think they're going to need more from all their young talents to really be in contention. And yeah, I mean, the Dodgers have been the Dodgers over the last couple of years, but they seem like they're in a great spot. They have a good mix of that, and then obviously a team like the Rangers, they just won the World Series, so I don't think they can be discounted either. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to that kind of veteran signings, kind of bigger star power, younger talent. And I think pitching. I think year over year, teams forget
yeah,
that got to go through all five. That depth is really what helps get you that extra win, which is what's going to help you, propel you over the edge. So, yeah, I think ultimately, obviously, both teams got better in the Yankees and the Dodgers. Especially Shohei was crushing it last year, and if he can come back as half of the pitcher that he was, it gives him another serviceable starter or bullpen guy. I
right,
know we've talked about him
exactly.
being a
Yeah,
being a closer in the past, so that just helps contribute to their success moving forward. Too obviously, Betts and Freeman seem like they're still up there too, so they seem like they are in a much better spot to give $700 million to someone versus the Yankees right now. And we'll see. It should be interesting. The AL East isn't getting any easier though. That's
No,
not an
it's
easy
getting harder.
division. So
No,
yeah.
yeah.
So we'll
No,
have to see.
I think if the Yankees are serious about just going all in this year, like go get a cheap guy like Corbin Burns, similar
Yeah,
to Soto last year in his contract. Go get another ace to pair with Garrett Cole. That's what they need so desperately.
yeah,
You're losing games where Garrett Cole is allowing one run, and it's very Degrom like with the
yeah,
Mets. Um, they need one more starter to solidify the rotation, a little more consistency because the rest outside of Cole, there's zero consistency, and there hasn't been for a long time. I can't remember. Obviously they've tried to make moves. Jordan Montgomery didn't work out. Andrew Heaney didn't work out. Montes hasn't worked out. Rodon hasn't worked out. They got to go get someone. They have to. You can't have Garrett Cole kind of alone because as we saw it in the playoffs too, like a couple years ago. Once Garrett Cole gets hit around, there's nothing for them. Their bullpen's been
yeah,
great. Their bullpen's been
yeah,
awesome. Their pitching coach has done a great job developing the bullpen, but starter wise, no one outside of Cole can be trusted or relied on to give them a good start. And I think that's the most concerning part. I think Herman was their second starter last year, and that's just
yeah.
not someone I want as my second starter.
No,
And that's speaking as a Red Sox fan, as a team that doesn't have a second starter. Like I don't want James Paxton as my second starter. I don't, and he's
yeah,
35. So
yeah,
it's they got to go get someone like Corbin Burns for super. I mean, not cheap. He's a great player. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. But with the way he's in a contract year this year, go get him. He's
yeah.
in a
Totally.
contract year. He's going to pitch his brains off, and there's no point not to. Obviously, there's guys like Dylan Cease too you could go for, but his return would be a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm the Yankees, I'm going all in. I'm getting Corbin Burns this year, and I'm winning the World Series. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go get if especially if you don't have to give up a lot for him because he's in that contract year. I mean, you got a couple of options. All right, cool. We didn't give up too much. Let's see how it goes, and then if 2024 doesn't go the way that we wanted to, all right, well then we look to 2025 and maybe there's a big roster shakeup. But I'm in agreement. So if you're gonna get Soto, you might as well start to sprinkle the other pieces because, yeah, you got to pitch, especially if you make the playoffs, at least a few games. You need a few starting pitchers there, not just Cole and whoever else you may trot out there to actually try to win it. So, I mean, and honestly, with the Yankees right now, it seems like they're in that mode. So we'll have to see. But that would be really their key to success in order to actually make sure that they have an opportunity to put themselves in a good spot for this year and give them some flexibility moving forward. So I like
Mm-hmm.
that move for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was another episode of the Dugout covering the most recent offseason free agency trades. Yeah, I mean, more news to come. Obviously, there's some big names still left, like Yamamoto, Bellinger, but yeah, pretty active, pretty active, pretty crazy offseason so far. So, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.